Hey class, it's Mrs. Piper, and in this lesson we are going to learn to calculate the surface area of cylinders and rectangular prisms. So the first thing that we want to look at is what is a rectangular prism. A rectangular prism is a 3D rectangular shape. So the first thing that you want to do when beginning to calculate the surface area is you want to label each of the sides of your cylinder. You want to label one as the height. That's pretty easy because you know it's up and down. And then you want to pick one and label it as the width and one and label it as the length. Okay, it really doesn't matter if you switch the width and the length. So label them as long as you put them into the formula correctly, whether you label 12 as the width or 15 as the width, you'll get the correct answer either way. Okay? All right, the second thing that we want to do is we want to write down our formula, and that's already been done for you. And remember, you do not have to memorize your formula. Surface area equals 2 length width plus 2 length height plus 2 width height. You can find your formulas always on the formula sheet that we gave you. And of course, you'll get one of those for the SOL test. But by writing the formula down, that's going to help you remember what you use the formula for and how you use it. And it's going to help you eliminate mistakes. So we want to go ahead and fill our numbers into the formula. So we've got 2 times the length. And I'm looking over here, and I have the length labeled as 15. So I'm going to write 15 in here. And now I have to write in the width, and the width is 12. So I've got 2 times 15 times 12. Now I want to do 2 times the length times the height. So I'm going to plug the length in again. It is 15. And I'm going to plug the height in, which is 20. And my last piece of the prism is 2 times the width times the height, and the width is 12 and the height is 20. Okay, so then I'm going to get my calculator out and I'm going to multiply these numbers together one set at a time, because I don't want to make mistakes. The last thing that you want to do is sit down with your calculator and try to plug all these numbers in and not write anything down and come up with an answer. Okay, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to make a careless error. So my first group of numbers is 360, and my second group of numbers is 600, and my third group of numbers is 480. Okay, so go ahead and stop the video and calculate your final answer, and then turn the video back on and you can check your final answer. And hopefully you got 1,440 meters, and you see there's a mistake here. It shouldn't be squared because this is a 3D object. It should be meters cubed. Your units are super, super important. Okay, now if you look to the left-hand side of your paper again, you'll see that I have drawn in a figure that you don't have on your paper, and this is called a net. Okay, and what a net is, I'm going to write that down, and you can stop the video at any point and copy the net and the notes about the net, or you can rewind it and listen to it again. A net is a two-dimensional, that looks like a A, but that's okay. A two-dimensional pattern for a three-dimensional object. So if I cut this prism apart right here, it would look like this net if it were laid flat on the ground. And you can see that these long pieces are all the same, and they represent the long pieces on the rectangular prism. And then we have the top and the bottom of the prism, and they're the same. Okay, so let's move on to our next example. Okay, so hopefully you're thinking that your first step is to write down the what? The formula, that's right. Surface area equals 2 times length times width plus 2 times length times height plus 2 times width times height. And notice when I'm writing all this multiplication, I'm not putting in x's, because now that we're in pre-algebra and getting ready for algebra, we don't want to use x's for multiplication. 2LW means 2 times length times width. Okay, the second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look back at my shape and I'm going to label the height, width, and the length. So my height I'm going to label as 25, and then you pick one of these, make the length, and one of these make the width. Width and length. Okay, so your second step is going to be to plug those numbers into the formula. So go ahead and stop the video, plug the numbers in, and then start the video again. All right, so hopefully you have 2 times 40 times 15 plus 2 times 40 times 25. I'm running out of space, so I'm going to go to the next line. 2 times 15 times 25. Okay, so our third step would be to calculate each of those sections individually. Okay, so go ahead and stop the video, and then you can come up with your calculations on your calculator, and you can write them in and check your answer with mine. So as you can see, I got 1,200. 2,750. We're going to add all of those together. That's going to give us our final answer. 3,950 meters. And what is our units? Meters what? That's right, meters cubed. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to skip the summary at the bottom. We're going to turn to the next page. And we're going to look at surface area of a cylinder. Okay, so notice the formula for surface area of a cylinder is 2 times pi times radius squared plus 2 times pi times the radius times the height. Okay, and hopefully some of you are thinking, that 2 pi r squared looks kind of familiar. We've already seen that formula. That is the formula for calculating the area of a circle. Okay, and a quick review, a radius is half the distance from the center to the outside of a circle, and the diameter is all the way across one side to the other through the center of the circle. That's our diameter. And then, in case you've forgotten, another important piece to our calculations is pi, which is equal to 3.14 when we're calculating. Okay? So we've got our formula. Now we want to look over to our cylinder, and we want to label the height and the radius. Okay, sometimes you're going to get the radius, sometimes you're going to get the diameter, and you're going to have to figure out what the radius is. Okay, so this is our radius, and this is the height of the cylinder. Okay. And if we look at the net of the cylinder, remember the net is when you cut it apart and you lay it flat on the ground. It's a pattern. Okay, you'll see that a cylinder is actually made up of 2 circles and a rectangle. Okay, and we know how to find the area of circles. It's 2 pi r squared. okay? 2 pi r squared, okay? That's how we find the areas of the circle. And then the rectangle part of the cylinder is found with the formula 2 pi radius times height. Okay, and that's going to be really important when we're looking at word problems, because sometimes in a word problem they might just ask you to calculate the top and the bottom of this cylinder, or we might ask you to calculate the surface area of a label on a soup can. So in those cases you would just want to use part of the formula instead of the whole thing. But we'll get more on that later. Right now we're calculating the whole cylinder. So let's go back up to our formula. We've got our formula written down, and let's start plugging in our numbers for the formula. So we have 2 times 3.14 times my radius, which is 7, and your radius is squared. Okay, you want to square your radius first before you do anything else. Then I have 2 times 3.14 times my radius, which is 7, times my height, which is 30. Okay. For my next step, I am going to calculate just my radius squared because I don't want to skip doing that. 7 squared is 49. And I'm going to multiply that by 2, 3.14. And I'm just going to bring all this down again until I'm ready to calculate this whole line of numbers. Okay, so I'm actually adding another step in here. So now I've got this. I'm going to change that to a plus because it was wrong anyways. And I am going to use my calculator and multiply all these numbers together. So go ahead and stop the video, do your calculations, and then turn it back on and check your answer. So my final answer for the surface area of this cylinder is 1,626.5, and I cannot forget to add my units. That's very important, and the units in this case are meters cubed, right? All right, let's move down to our last example. Okay, so first step, we're going to write the formula. Surface area equals 2 pi r squared. And what part of the formula is the 2 pi r squared? Is that the squares? The rectangle, or is that the circles? Right, that's the circle part of the formula. Okay, so if we didn't want to include the circle in our calculation, we would take that part of the formula out. And we've got 2 times pi times r times h. Okay, so go ahead and stop the video. I want you to try to substitute all those numbers in one step at a time, and then you can turn the video back on and check your answer with mine. All right, so here you can see I've done all my calculations. Notice in this step right here, all I did was the 5 squared. You always want to do the squared first, just like PEMDAS says. You do exponents, parentheses, all that before you do multiplication. So I've got 157 plus 376.8, which adds up to be 533.8 meters cubed. Give yourself a pat on the back if you remembered to put meters cubed on that one. All right, so now we're going to go back to the first page, down at the bottom where it says summary, and I want you to come up with some examples of rectangular prisms and cylinders in everyday life. Try to get 3 or 4. Okay, so examples of rectangular prisms and cylinders in everyday life. If you even want to bring in some of your examples to share, that would be great. I'm going to pull some out of my storage closet, but I'm sure between all of us, we can have some super good examples. So you make a list of your cylinder examples, just things around your house or things that you can think of, and make a list of rectangular prism examples. And I'm going to give you one that you cannot use, but it will help you get started. Okay, a cylinder would be a soup can. You know, any kind of soup with a circle top and bottom. Okay, and a rectangular prism, I'm going to say a box of cereal. So there are hundreds of examples of these, and I know that you all are much more creative than I am. So hopefully we are not going to have any more bad weather, and I will see you all back in class.